welcome to Show Me What You've Got. This is our final culminating event of this cohort, and we do have our weekly sync tomorrow, which is just to wrap things up and actually to share the award winners for the voting that'll happen today, related to each of related to the projects that are shared. I'll talk a little bit about that in just a second, but let's kick this off. We've got a lot of presentations today. I'm really excited to see what you've all presented, and let's just jump into it. So just have a quick welcome here, then we'll get into the projects, demos. We'll wrap up with some thank yous. There'll be some thank yous in the beginning as well, and then you'll graduate. Yay! All right, here's the team that met in Austin. We had a great time. For those of you who were there, I hope you enjoyed it. For those of you who are unable to attend in person, I hope you're able to take away some of the learning and fun that happened by connecting virtually. We're going to have a bit of an overview here in case we have people who are joining who weren't in this cohort or who haven't been in Launchpad for a little while. Maybe they did Launchpad in one of the earlier cohorts. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen there a bit of the timeline of how we've gotten to where we are and how the program's developed. And just as an overview, Launchpad's a 4-week onboarding program designed to train, develop, and match technical talent at scale with opportunities in Web3 across the Protocol Labs network. And so throughout the 6 weeks that we've spent together, Launchpad has been working with this cohort V7 to scale, hire, onboard, and build community throughout the Protocol Labs network. And those faces down the bottom of the screen there are the wonderful team that I get to work with that makes this possible. Just running across the list there, just to give everyone a quick shout out. We've got Molly, Brooke, Enol, Carla, myself, Christian, Walker, Lindsay, Marco, Katie, Hannah, and Snow. So when you're in touch with them next, thank them for the work they put in on the curriculum, logistics, events, etc., to make this happen. Before we move on any further, actually, I just want to say another thanks to anyone who volunteered as a mentor and the roles that mentors play for us in Launchpad. It's an integral part of our program, and thank you for giving up your time to support the current cohort members and their learning and guiding them, and people who are currently in the cohort. We'd love to welcome you back as a mentor in the very near future, but more about that later. We've got a big group here today and lots of exciting projects to share. All right, let's get into this thing. Let's begin. Show me what you've got. Oh, one last thing. Sorry. That little QR code you see in the top corner of the screen. You can scan that with a phone. It will link you to a Google form, and it will that's a voting form for, I think there's about 8 categories of awards. The award winners will receive swag, and we will announce those tomorrow during our weekly sync. I'll keep reminding you, and at the end of the Show Me What You've Got session, there'll be another link that you can use to access the voting form. We'll also put that in Slack after Show Me What You've Got, so you can consider your voting options after seeing all of your presentations. So I think without further ado, let's see what you've got. Courtney's going to start us off here. Courtney, would you like to screen share? Are you happy for me to continue?
You can continue. Thanks, Dave.
Okay, awesome.
So I regret that I was not able to join all of you in Austin during Colo Week. So for those who I haven't had a chance to connect or meet yet, my name is Courtney Della Rosa, and I am a member of the Spaceport content team. So for my project, I am going to be working on increasing output and subscribers ×2 on PL's Substack. And Substack is an email newsletter platform that we are using to disseminate our newsletters. You can go to the next slide.
Okay.
So for those who may not be familiar, these are the newsletters that you should have seen hit your inbox so far if you subscribe to our Substack, and if you don't, you should. So all of the Lab Week communications, you received the monthly PLN updates, and most recently, the Lab Day highlights all live on Substack. So that's my primary area of focus. Go to the next slide. So here's a quick recap of my project, what I'm going to be working on. So the overall goal is to develop and distribute high value content that grows PL's follower base on Substack and grow the PLN Substack subscriber list by 50% during H1 of 2023 and by 100% by the end of 2023. A few things we've learned with these 3 different newsletters we've done is that partnering with teams to disseminate information about events creates spikes in subscribers. We really saw that during Lab Week, as you'll see on the next slide when I show some numbers. The network wants more valuable content like funding news, marketing and ops help, things like that. And high quality video content is definitely a driver to increase engagement, shares, and follows. So we're going to be looking to expand our reach beyond the current PL network base, trying to engage some other audiences and identifying opportunities to partner with other teams in the network. So you can go to the next slide. So here's a look at the numbers. We started off when I launched Substack in August with 574 subscribers. We rounded out November with 1,609 and maintained some really steady open rates. So that's 182% increase in subscribers since we launched in August. And that's really good considering we haven't been really doing a whole lot yet in terms of efforts to really promote and expand the subscriber base. So I think once I kind of implement my project and we take some more initiatives, I definitely think that my goals will be attainable. A couple of other learnings is we've seen that increased output is well received when the information is interesting and relevant to the network. There's definitely a need for content that is interesting to both technical and less technical audiences. And almost 20% of our Substack visitors click through the links, which is really good. So that's next slide. So strategy and next steps, we plan to ship 2 additional newsletters. So increasing our Substack output to weekly, increasing the cadence from 2 a month to 4 a month. Rebranding our current PLN updates a bit with a greater emphasis on funding news, since we are going to be doing 4 different newsletters, all with a little bit different twist. We will kind of spread out the types of information we're putting in the different newsletters. We're going to work to increase video content as much as possible within the newsletters, start cross-posting more. We've been doing a little bit of it, but really ramp up on cross-posting on all PL channels that our team currently oversees, and just continuing to identify opportunities to collaborate across the ecosystem to highlight teams, events, individuals, content, resources, etc. Go to the next slide. So by the end of January, you guys will see 2 new newsletters come out for me. The first is going to be called Web3 in 60, and it is a monthly newsletter distilling topics, concepts, and tools in the Web3 space, covering everything from DeSci and DeFi, things of that nature, Filecoin, etc. And this newsletter will include a brief top line, and then from there will be a bullet point style format with key concepts and include a 60-second clip from a founder or subject matter expert on the topic. And again, going back to collaboration across the ecosystem, this is an opportunity for us to work with other teams in the network who, might work on in these different areas, and also to work with Launchpad on featuring some Launchpad curriculum when it makes sense. And we will also include a library of resources, videos, blogs, things like that for folks who are looking to dive a little bit deeper into the topics. So that's the first one. You can expect that mid-January. And the second is You Asked, We Answered. That's going to be a monthly newsletter written in a Q&A format addressing some of the most common questions raised by the PLN community. Again, an opportunity for collaboration across the ecosystem. We'll be collecting input in terms of questions that are coming up a lot from community ops, who has very high touch with the network teams and just other interactions with founders, labbers, even you guys really will be taking input from anyone who wants to raise a question, and we'll curate the list from there based on the questions we're seeing most commonly pop up. And again, kind of the same concept of answering these questions and providing resources, partnering with those in the network who are experts on these things to provide answers to questions. And also this will provide an opportunity to point readers back to Mosaic as a resource. There's a lot of a lot of the smaller teams out there who maybe don't have the resources for, to have a full-on content team or marketing team or things like that. And we can kind of use this as a tool to provide some guidance and resources for them. And lastly, it's not on the slide, but I'm also going to be working with the events team and community ops as well to identify some different teams in the network who, again, those smaller teams who might not have the resources to promote their events, so that we could potentially take on a piece of that with helping to disseminate, valuable information about their events to include in our newsletters, since we saw that helped us so much around Lab Week. So that's what I'll be working on.
Awesome. Thanks, Courtney. And it's exciting, that massive increase in subscribers. I wonder if there was like a Lab Week influence in there that somehow also aided the expansion or access of it. Also, I just want to say for everybody, Courtney did a great job of staying within our time limit, which is 7 minutes. And after about 5 minutes, I'll give you a polite reminder that to start moving towards the end, just so we can squeeze everybody in within an appropriate time frame. Up next, we have Britt. Britt, you happy for me to keep sharing, or would you like to take over?
No, please, by all means.
All right, go ahead.
Cool. So as you know, my name is Britt. I met most of you at Lab Week, Colo Week. I work for research acceleration, and a lot of the work that we do is trying to solve the problems that researchers are facing in academia and industry. And one of the biggest problems is journal publishing. It's a huge thorn in the side of all research. So today I have a thought experiment to show you guys. It's called journalist manuscript publishing, a conceptual decentralized framework. Please next. So what is the issue with journals, and why is it such a thorn in the side of researchers? So first and foremost, journals are a business. It started out that there was, a notable series of journals. They would actually, they would curate and assemble volumes and send those volumes as printed works to people to read in the academic sphere. Well, now it's 2022, and journals are just PDF, sites now. Everything is PDF. There's hardly any actual printed volumes, so to speak of, and they have just ballooned. There's potentially over 20,000 notable academic journals right now, and because there's just so many and they're so fragmented, there are a few notable companies that have come to the top. So Elsevier, Springer, Taylor and Francis, each one of them owns 2,900 of these journals collectively. Their revenue is measured in the billions of dollars. I think Elsevier last year, their just profit was $2 billion, which is just absolutely wild. And one of the biggest ethical concerns with journals right now is that they double dip. And what I mean by that is in order to get your article into a journal, you have to pay the journal for publication. So you pay them a couple $1,000s to get your article published. Usually you pay by page. And then everyone else has to pay then to access that journal as well. So it's all usually taxpayer funded dollars. So taxpayers are usually the ones paying the bills for the researchers to publish the work. And they're also paying the institutions and the students and the doctors to be able to get that work back. So that's really crappy. I think California just published some rulings recently, or maybe it was the whole United States, that that made taxpayer funded work supposed to be open access by default. We'll see how that works out. I'm sure the journals aren't very happy about that. But first and foremost, though, journals are a money-making business. On top of that, they have an opaque peer review process. So peer review, if you don't know, that is kind of the method through which all academic work is regarded to be either crap or good. You go through a peer review process of other experts in the field, and they unbiasedly will either approve it or not. And then once it's elevated to approval status, it makes it into the journal in theory. Though that process is complicated because the peer reviewers are anonymous, and oftentimes there are conflicts of interest, and they know who you are as the submitter, but you don't know who they are. And it is not unusual for a peer reviewer to reject a paper because it's from a competing lab and they want to, get a step ahead. So another big thing that sucks is that journals are a measure of prestige. So they're all about I want to get into the best possible, highest impact factor journal. It's not a method of getting papers out. It's a matter of prestige. And really the biggest issue is that journals, because they're sustaining a business model, it's more of a trying to sustain their reputation and their impact factor. There's no limit on how many PDFs a given journal could publish. A journal could publish all works that happen to meet their criteria for publication, but instead they only want to release a certain amount because they need to keep the supply low and the demand high. And so it ends up being a matter of saturation economics, not a matter of actual academic rigor, which is kind of a nightmare in the world where that should be the only thing that matters. So can we go to the next slide? I just wanted to pose to you what I think could be a pretty cool conceptual framework. It reinvents journals as an interconnected network of manuscripts. Each manuscript is effectively connected to all other manuscripts through what would otherwise be treated as like the citations. So all of the direct citations of a given paper, those are primary nodes. The citations of those citations are the secondary nodes, and so on and so on and so on. And then with a network like this network can be somewhat hands-off. It can be decentralized. It can be stored, on servers all over the world. So that way, like, no one corporate entity controls it. And then how do you get a new manuscript onto the network? It could be through an open peer review process, such that if you want to insert your manuscript on the network in a very specific spot, connected to a very specific subset of the manuscripts already on the network, it can then be peer reviewed by those direct tier 1 manuscripts, and then subsequently the tier 2s and tier 3s in a weighted mechanism until a critical mass of endorsements are reached, and then the paper can be then added to the network. And then that paper, once it's on the network, that author is then able to then endorse other papers, future papers that want to be on the network. So it becomes like a self-sustaining model for papers joining the network. In theory, it opens up the peer review. It allows for more predictability. It also allows for more labs to be a part of the peer review process, as opposed to just the 3 or so that are required in today's model. And can we go to the next slide? I think I'm running out of time. So the next slide is that just basic considerations. It's actually not dissimilar to how it already exists. So the way it already exists today is that you don't get published until you go through this peer review process. The people that are the experts in the field that are peer reviewed, they're already not being paid for it. So we're not asking anything more of people. They're already making $0. So let's continue giving them $0. Maybe there's a monetary way to do that, but I don't know about that. And then you could basically create a seed network. So you could create the starting framework for the seed network off of the framework that already exists today. So every paper has a list of authors. Every paper has a list of citations, and you could use those citation maps to basically create what is like the version 1 framework to lay the groundwork for then everything afterwards to then kind of build off of. Now, collapsing journals into a knowledge network, it takes away that prestige factor. So being published in Nature or Science or one of the big journals, which is today a career maker, like that's how you get a job at Harvard, is you have to get your papers in those big ass journals. That kind of goes away. So the new metric would have to be redefined. So that new metric would basically be the number of nodes connected to a primary node. So if your paper is really bad and nobody wants to cite you as their source, you're likewise not going to be connected to very many things. Your impact factor is going to be relatively low. If you're the paper that every work cites, like if you're Hodgkin Huxley and you wrote the DNA paper, then yeah, you're going to have an impact factor through the roof. And so I feel like that's actually a more direct measure of your success, rather than I was published in Nature and don't actually look further, don't actually read the paper, just know that I was published in Nature and that's all you need to know. That's effectively the unit of currency right now. Now, like any new thing, the system is only good as the number of researchers that embrace it. So if we were to roll something out like this and researchers hated it, they thought it was terrible, it's going to fall flat on its face. So it needs to reach like a critical mass of adoption for it to work. But I don't think that this model is any worse than what we have. In fact, I think it's pretty much better in every possible way. And I would love to see this rolled out. Technically, I don't know exactly what I'm asking for. I definitely think that there is like a use of like blockchain technology would be really great to allow for like an archival record of like every paper and where it's been. Like once it's on the network, in theory, that shouldn't change. So that can be distributed from node to node or from server to server who's hosting. So the closest we have to this right now is a service called Web of Science. And Web of Science is incredibly expensive and it's totally proprietary. So we would want to be the antithesis of that. And I think I'm out of time. So with that, I'm going to say thank you. And if there's any questions, do we have time for questions?
We probably don't right now, but maybe people could follow up with you if they have any questions. Okay. Super cool idea. I've been able to get Zoom open on my phone, so I've been seeing some of the comments in the chat, which is great. A lot of positive feedback coming through. Awesome stuff, Brett. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
All right, we've got Chris and Luke up next. And are you happy for me to continue sharing my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. You guys can take it away whenever you're ready.
Awesome. So very similar to what our presentation is kind of similar to what we presented down in Austin, but I'm Chris Williams. I'm a recruiter, obviously across the org here at PL, but one of the things that we're going to be doing moving forward is we're going to be recruiting for the PL network. And one thing, and Luke and I have really kind of focused on, is getting two forms for a couple of reasons. One, we want to learn about the company because we feel that there's valuable to understand everything that the company does, their mission, their value, how they're connected to Protocol Labs in general, and then what they do in the sector. This is going to be vital for us in order to attract positive talent to present to these companies. Also, with these companies, it's a little bit different than PL. They're various sizes. They could be 1 to 2, they could be 10, 15 plus. And when you hire, that's a different type of hiring, from 0 to 3 or 4 people versus 10 plus. So Luke and I have created a pretty, I wouldn't say it's generic, it goes deeper dive in some areas, but really understanding what the company does, what value they add to Web3, so we can kind of help find qualified candidates. That being said, this also allows the company to learn about us. I think one thing that we're kind of learning as we go through this process is it's just as valuable for us to learn about the company. It's important for them to learn about us. And so, what does our history look like? What have we done? Where have we recruited, and what have we recruited for? That's kind of like the company intake, just kind of overall. And then obviously we take the next step. Once we know about the company and the value that they add in that area, then we actually go into the recruiting of the roles and what they're looking for.
So what we have learned throughout this process, recruiting for true startups, it's going to look a lot different from what we currently do. I know Protocol Labs likes to call itself a startup. That may be true, but this is going to be true blue startup recruiting. There's going to be no name recognition, brand recognition. Having that pre-established reputation goes a heck of a long way. So that'll affect everything down to the messaging, to the initial conversation, all the way to the close at the end. Big focus on selling culture, vision, founders, founder history, founder success. So the company intake form really deep dives into that. The other thing that we learned is we're going to have to pay a lot of attention to detail, really dot our I's, cross our T's. Every single one of these companies is going to be different. So having a way to quickly and thoroughly get this information out in the open, have it open and accessible by anybody, so we can stay mobile and bounce between these different companies and roles is going to be key. The forms are linked here if you wanted to check them out. They are still kind of in the beta form. We love feedback. We really want to iterate these things. what we've done this week is Chris and myself sat down with our recruiting manager, Mark Caraway, and just ran through a quick little mock intake call. He was pretending to be Gold Sky, and the form worked extremely well. Obviously, you kind of let the conversation flow, but we were able to get a ton of information and got some solid feedback there. I also sent it to one of our sourcers who's going to act more as like a recruiter as we transition into next year and start working on these PLN roles. And it was great. They had a great mock intake call. So it's nice that this form is very transversable, I guess you could say. There's going to be a lot of unknowns for the recruiting team in 2023. We're still working through these questions, but we're really hoping that these forms will kind of help us work through all that ambiguity and help us find success with these PLN companies.
Thanks a lot, Chris and Luke. That sounds, recruiting in 2023 might look a little different, and that seems like a fun addition. All right, LaCrista, whenever you are ready.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. My project is adding a preferred contact method for teams to the PLN directory. I'm part of the engagement working group within Spaceport. Spaceport supports the network through content, events, and engagement. To help teams engage, we need to help them connect first. So one way we do this is by maintaining the PLN directory. You can access the team page of the PLN directory at plnetwork.io/teams to check it all out. Through speaking with many founders and PLN teams, we found that they were really struggling to kind of navigate the network and connect with the right folks. So in November, we focused our efforts on adding PLGO working groups to the directory, like Lurk and Bedrock. Now we'd like to add another layer to improve the effectiveness of the directory. Our goal is to provide PLN teams and working groups with the ability to receive and route inquiries efficiently, taking those off of just the leads and kind of being able to disperse those within a team, and provide PLN members with the ease of access to the correct teams within the network and correct folks. Some challenges that we've seen are that we would like to have authentication in place in the directory prior to adding multiple options for contact. We believe that this may be, maybe this is a teaser, hopefully active sometime in the first quarter. The update for the preferred method of contact will not be live on the website in the expected timeline. We've been pushed back about 3 weeks. Through working on the project, we've learned that teams are really interested in listing more than one method of contact so that folks can kind of drive those inquiries based on the topic. The outreach has prompted teams to review and update their profiles, which has been really exciting. PLN teams are very responsive. We've processed over 60 field edits in the directory in the last couple days, updating and adding information to the directory, making sure teams are assigned to the right working groups or folks are. So it's been really exciting. Next slide. Okay, the progress we've made so far is that we do have the new team intake form live on the directory. So now every new team that comes in can add their preferred method of contact when they're entering their team information. We also have updated the request to edit form for teams to include this line as well. So folks can go in and add that information themselves. We receive the edits and update the directory. We've completed outreach to 188 teams this week. 45 of those are PLGO teams and working groups, and 143 PLN teams. 4% of the PLGO teams and working groups have provided their preferred method of contact, and 10% of our PLN teams have provided their preferred method of contact. Next slide. Our next steps in the process are to obtain contact information for 12 remaining teams that are network teams. We're possibly missing founder emails or team lead contact information on, and correct any folks that have had like bounced emails. We'll initiate an outreach campaign to additional leads for those PLN teams if there's co-founders or other team leads within their group if we've not received a response. We'll also initiate and track a Slack or Discord campaign so that we're able to meet folks where they are. We want to go where the team leads are and ask for this information so that we make it easy to respond. We'd like to reach a completion rate of 70% for PLGO teams and working groups and 30% for PLN teams, just understanding the size of some of their teams. They don't have necessarily a group email or something of that nature. The update to the directory is expected to go live and be viewable to folks as of January 6th of 2023. You should be able to see the preferred method of contact where we've got that blue oval on this image. And my ask for you all is to please take a look at your team profiles at the start of the new year. If there's not a preferred method of contact, help me get one added. You can shoot me a quick message on Slack, Discord, via email, or go in and request to edit via the button in the directory. If you feel like your working group is missing, reach out. We're happy to help you get it added.
All right. Thanks, Krista.
Thank you.
Christian's up next.
All right, much like what I've mentioned in the previous Show Me What You Got in Austin, very similar. On the next slide, Dave, you'll see that I've started kind of revamping the learning objectives of the PLN curriculum. So you'll see an iteration of phases where we'll begin rolling out these changes, which is another way for you to keep coming back to the PL curriculum to see the new updates. It's going to be a lot more targeted and focused in terms of what you'll be learning, especially for the new onboarding hires. And much like to what LaKrista said about a lot of information not being conveniently placed in one location, the goal of this revamp for the PLN is to have the majority of the resources, especially for the teams, to be in one location so that you don't have to keep scrambling around to all the different Notion pages, Google Drives, or slacking everyone, but where to find things. So this is like a quick preview. And then if you go to the next slide. This is some sort of my iteration of it. It hasn't been committed and pulled yet, but this is what the new curriculum page would look like in terms of the section for Protocol Labs Network. You'll see it's a bit more targeted and refined in terms of the sections. We are definitely developing more of the grant and research page, especially what current research are happening, and also creating more of understanding what the big 5 big groups are in the PL organization. So this is just a teaser for what you'll see in the upcoming iterations that we release next year. And the next slide. So right now, these are the current steps where I'll be working with the network goods to create a section for what their services are. A lot of us don't really know what they do. I myself am still learning what they still do. I'm going to be working with Spaceport to deliver updated directories and almanacs and to keep all the resources up to date. Same thing with the research and grant teams. There are a lot more research teams that are in existence in PL, and I just learned that recently. So that's going to be updated for all of you to come back to the curriculum and check out. And just some overall curricular structures that are implementing with an increased focus on non-technical understanding, differentiating technical individuals via tracks, and keeping all the resources updated with the evolving ecosystem of the network. Which also leads me to, please, if you're interested in collaborating with me or the curriculum team in updating information or adding information, Slack me or email me. Happy to work with you. And you'll probably see a lot of these updates through Courtney's newsletter when we collaborate together. This is the plug for Courtney, and just working together. So utilize this curriculum and check in next year to see the update. That's all.
Awesome. Thanks, Christian. Piggybacking off of some of the things that Christian said at the end there, the Protocol Labs Launchpad curriculum that you've interacted with is public and always accessible. So if you ever want to come back to it, you know, a couple weeks or months down the line, it's always there. And we will be linking at the end of this Show Me What You Got and through Slack, an end of cohort survey where we really value feedback on things like the curriculum as well as the whole 6-week experience. So if you've noticed that something you think some area needs some tweaks, or we need to focus a little bit more on something, please do let us know. We've got a lot of changes coming down the line next year, and we'd like to build out a little more. It's kind of links to what Christian was doing for his project. So thanks a lot, Christian. Aziz is up next. Aziz, you happy for me to continue sharing, or would you like to share?
No, you can continue sharing, Dave.
Okay, awesome. Take it away.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Aziz. I met quite a few of you during Colo Week. And as you know, I work in social media. I did a session during Colo Week on why social is so unique, specifically in crypto, and more specifically even on Twitter. One thing we lack in crypto across the board, and in Web3 in general, is language diversity. You can go to the next slide, Dave, please.
Sure.
Yeah. So Web3 is very much predominantly English speaking, which makes sense because we're still in the early days of this industry. And even if we decide to translate a lot of the jargon, a lot of it isn't really translatable to other languages, because again, it's so new. A lot of it is still manual. We have to coin a lot of the terms, no pun intended. And it's not an easy thing to do, given that we tap into a lot of markets. We are very global in nature. But nonetheless, we can do that. So for my project, I work with the TLDR team. For those of you who don't know, we provide sort of bite-sized basic content that talks about Filecoin, which is perfect for us to translate into other languages. And my approach was to create a landing page for Filecoin TLDR in Arabic. And the main goal is pretty much to tap into different markets and help achieve widespread adoption of crypto. But the challenge here is that I want to point out that translation does not necessarily mean localization. So the Ethereum Foundation does provide translated versions of their website, but it's not really localized, meaning that if a native speaker of that language reads it, they won't really resonate. I felt the exact same way when I read their Arabic landing page. Sure, it's grammatically correct, it's polished and everything, but it doesn't feel localized. It feels very robotic and not human. And that is something that we can change. So the next step would be to create, as I said, an Arabic and French landing page, because sadly I only speak Arabic and French and English. But thankfully we have, again, we have Filecoin TLDR, which launched recently. If you didn't check that out, I highly recommend you do so. After we come up with those landing pages, the process can be streamlined easily to other languages. And this can help with not only our presence or SEO performance, but also for events. So we have ETH Dubai in March, so the Arabic landing page would fit perfectly for that. If we have an event anywhere in the world, we would always have a localized / translated landing page for that location. It would help with anyone who's interested in Filecoin to feel that they are welcome, that they resonate with this project. and that we are definitely, it would reinforce our mission of being global at heart. And also it's going to help, what helps is that as an organization, we're very international. We have people from all over the world who can help with localizing these landing pages. This is still very premature. I think we can, we're going to build it as we go. But I definitely think that this is something that we need not only for Protocol Labs, but in Web3 in general. And yeah, keep an eye out for our first non-English landing page for Filecoin TLDR.
Awesome. Thanks, Aziz. I think this sounds super valuable. I think we've got people joining this call from 4 continents today. And I think hope to see more of this throughout the PL network in the future. Megan.
Hey guys.
On TikTok. You want me to share? Are you happy to share?
You can share.
Cool. All right. Go ahead.
Hey guys, I'm Meg, as you know. I'm on Spaceport working content and marketing. And my project was to develop a plan to launch Protocol Labs on TikTok. Okay, so why TikTok? So at first glance, this app is just littered with dancing teens. There's all kinds of weird challenges, like where you pour NyQuil and chicken, sleepy chicken. My grandma has been warning me for like 3 years in all caps text messages, like China's spying on you. It's littered with a lot. So I'll answer the last slide. Why TikTok? So TikTok has more than 1 billion monthly active users. Let me just go to my own thing. And really, this is a way for us to market and share our content with a really wide audience. As I don't know if Rich Chang is on here, but we talked this morning, he says it's basically Team Google. And one of the biggest communities is tech. And this is a really fun way for us to tell these stories and have fun with our community, expanding the reach of our YouTube content as well. In the next half, we'll be doing a series about founders. So we're going to kind of adapt those for TikTok. And really, it's a great way that the 3 points I do want to make, I think that are important, are it's a really great way for us to develop brand awareness, share our knowledge, and also support recruiting. It's a great audience. And also it's pretty cheap to make content on there, as you'll see in my slides. Okay, so next slide. All right, so why should we be on there? You know what? I don't think that updated. Okay, well, anyway, so we are the experts that's building Web3. As you can see below, I put some hashtags that are trending. We have a ton of influencers there that are just talking about Web3, that have never worked in Web3, never built Web3. So I think it's really important for us to leverage everyone we have that's actually building Web3, explaining Web3, and just instead of making it, this abstract concept, it's like, this is what we're doing. And we have, hundreds of experts. As we already have, you can see in this call how many talented people we have, and this is just Launchpad. And there's just so many stories waiting to be told in a new way. And as you can see, I'm plugging our the directory again. But as you go through there, you'll just see the teams, and within every one of those teams is a different story. So, okay, so how are we going to do this? It is very cringe sometimes when brands launch on TikTok. And as I mentioned before, we're not going to have our founders doing, TikTok dances or, engaging in any of those weird challenges. So, it's like, how do we enter the conversation in a way that's, approachable and fun and informative? So what's really great about TikTok is you can see how many times these hashtags are used. So, within, history TikTok, leadership, book talk, there's really just a way for us to enter the conversation in these trending hashtags. And I think an amazing thing is, telling these stories visually. We have so many companies with just tons of stories. Starling Lab is one of them. we filmed. The middle one is from our the founder series that we will be launching. And then also just other ways too, like Book Talk. That's where, everyone goes for recommendations. And like I basically just filmed that yesterday in my house. As you can see, there's a sock on the floor I left, but it's very low cost. Next slide, please. And it's also a way, so I think we can sneak into the conversation, in the last slide, but also just really sharing the depth of our knowledge in Web3. With, as you saw in recruiting, we are going to be hiring a lot in the next year with all these startups, and it's just a way to kind of engage in a fun way. Like, we don't have to say Web3 everything. There's an article CNBC just did, we're the #1 remote company. Like, that would be a way to join the conversation. It's like, hey, that's us. And I think, this really touches so many teams in the ecosystem, whether it's recruiting, Outercore, Spaceport, and Dres, and just being able to have fun with it. And just an example, again, I did yesterday with my dog. And what kind of Britt talked about is there's a lot of problems in, with centralization and in science currently. And I think this is a way for us to be able to share those stories in, memes or just fun, different ways. Next slide. Okay. And yeah, there's just, I think the possibilities for this, for short form, are really endless. Explainers do really well on there. There's a lot of ones that are like Web 2 versus Web 3. So it could be like Zoom versus Huddle. Q&As, we could share a lot of stuff with our company news. Explainers would be great. And I think, I'm working with Christian and Launchpad to kind of develop some stuff. And it's a way to have fun too. Sometimes there's trending songs that we can, mix up with our video footage, and, also updates too within, companies. Back to Courtney and the newsletter, I think that's a huge thing too. I just did an example where it's like CryptoSat. It's closing its seed round and it's going to launch crypto satellites into orbit. Like, that's super cool, and great, visually for that. So next slide. And so, yeah, that's it. So thank you guys. It's been a pleasure being in this cohort, and yeah, thank you everyone for coordinating and doing all this, and it's been fun. So, and feel free to obviously email me any suggestions. I am all ears for anything.
Thanks a lot, Megan. You have me wanting to make a TikTok account. That looks fun.
Please do, and follow.
Carol's up next.
All right, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm not going to share my video feed. I'm a little bit under the weather, but happy to see everyone here. So my presentation will be a little bit of reiteration of what I already presented on the Launchpad on site. I do have a couple of more screenshots and a couple of more links to the actual product. So I'll be happy to share those, or you can access them from the slides. Please, next slide. Thank you. As most of you know, I work with the Saturn team, and the first assignment that I did pick up is to work on the stats dashboard for the L1 node that we're running. And the overview of the project would be to, well, it's a strictly technical project. There's a lot of coding, not much of researching. It's refactoring mostly, but also this project allowed me to get to know all of the technologies of protocol stack across the stack. It was very much focused on team's current needs and priorities, and it is both internal and external user facing. Internally, we're using that to monitor our node. Externally, we also share this stats dashboard with with our clients, maybe not clients, community operators of L1 nodes, I'd say. Next slide, please. And the motivation for this project was that current stats dashboard was very limited in technology. It was very MVP-ish, and when it was created, it was very much do and forget project. It kind of grew during the development time, so it's just natural that it needs a little bit of rework. There's a lot of features that were missing: no sorting, no searching, no filtering, limited use of tooltips, and no actual help. A lot of our users were asking, like, why is this red, or why is this an issue? Usually we are helping out on the community channel, but it would be great to have some more info into what those metrics and stats actually mean. Technologically, it was also hard to extend, maintain, and modify because it was just a generated output from the backend. With time, the list of nodes grew to more than 300 right now, and this kind of view started to be really hard to follow. It didn't provide the overview that was intended. On the technical side, it also was tightly coupled with Orchestrator, which is one of our servers that we use for aggregating nodes in Saturn network. And the idea was that Orchestrator should be a single responsibility service, and the dashboard should be deployed to a different subdomain. It also, as one of the motivations, it also sounded like it's a good Launchpad project. Like I mentioned, it gave me a lot of insight into different parts of the Protocol Labs stack. Mainly service infrastructure. I had to use AWS. I did start using Flick libraries, like the Filecoin address library, at least, and some repositories, mostly from the Saturn team. It was also it is also a high visibility project since the improvements impact the team and community. So the actual output of this will be used on production. And one of the main reasons was also that it can be finished in a limited time, which is one of the requirements here. So we make sure that we kind of finish the project at some point and move on. And it was also a low-hanging fruit for a newcomer like me, since it didn't require much knowledge just to start the project. But throughout the project, I got a lot of insight from the stack that I was working on. Next slide, please. So currently, this project is deployed on the under the address that is provided on the top of the slide. Visually, it is a little bit more pleasing than the previous one. It contains all the features that were missing, and it can be played with on this address. It's worth to mention that it is deployed to IPFS. Flick.co is deploying the project to IPFS node, so you can also check what kind of CID it has and access it from any of the gateways. Next slide, please. So the work so far from the technical perspective, the code got integrated into dashboard source that is available on the GitHub. It's still a branch. There is an open pull request that should be merged or reviewed and merged as soon as possible. It's both deployed to Netlify and to IPFS on Flick. Work with Flick was not without issues, but they were very helpful, and they upgraded the gateway So we were able to deploy the project. It contains all the requested features like sorting, filtering, searching. It contains live updates, which previously were just refreshing the page and pulling the data every minute from the backend. And right now it refreshes every 10 seconds in the background, and only the change data is updating. There's also a toggle to disable refreshing if you want to keep looking at the data in the current state, so the data doesn't move around. There's also one heavily requested feature to click to share a copy of the current state of the dashboard. So you can filter out a couple of nodes. Let's say you are a community operator and you want to share your nodes with someone over on Slack. You just filter out and copy out a long link that contains all the state, and it can help you out sharing. And it also contains a slide in with node details that can be extended to present a little bit more insight into the actual node that you are viewing. In terms of improvements, it contains better tooltips, sharing without delay. Previously, they were just browser tooltips. Dedicated copy buttons next to most useful data, so it allows you to check the operator's email, like a copy operator's email or field address easily. It improves authentication, works with password managers right now. Next slide, please. And as final steps to this project, I definitely want this to be merged, then deployed to production, then get some feedback from community operators and implement any features that were missing. Right now, it's going to be much more easily extendable. We also have a little bit more space in the node details view, so that's going to be much more pleasant to maintain and extend. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Sounds like a exciting development. Walker, it looks like we're back to you. Is this the correct spot?
Yep. Okay, the Rube Goldberg machine. The problem is that we'd like to have some more activities for deep divers during Colo to get more integrated with different Protocol Labs tools. And it would be nice if it was something that's sort of simple to do so we can get the beginner programmers, but also still be interesting to the most advanced. And it should be fun. So I thought of creating something like a Rube Goldberg competition where you split the group into teams, maybe 2, 3 individuals. Ideally, you have people with different language expertise, JavaScript people, Go people, any language, it doesn't matter, because we want to show how interoperable everything is. And then you have each team spend a little bit of time every day just mapping out a crazy Rube Goldberg machine. Use Web3 tech like libp2p and IPFS. And you can even incorporate Web 2 stuff like I did today. I've got a Google search component. And then integrate as many people's computers as possible. So the neat thing about libp2p is that you can pretty easily have nodes talk to each other, no matter if they're in the same location. And then at the end, have a little competition about who can make the longest or most interesting chain. So I built a little MVP just to start getting a feel for how this could work. And in my little Rube Goldberg machine, we start and Nikolai is actually helping me. He responded to my Slack chat. So we ran through this real quick before this, and it worked. So he's using the this computer one is Nikolai, and he's using the libp2p chat example application. And so I told him you have to specify like a topic. So he doesn't need to know my IP address or anything like that, just a topic. So the topic was Rube, and he starts the chat application, gives it the topic of Rube. It connects to my system, and then he can type some search phrase, and the search term gets sent over libp2p to me on computer 2 here. Then my node will do a Google search for that. I instructed him not to do anything inappropriate, but he's got admin access essentially on what gets shown next. But that file will get downloaded to my computer, and then my computer will add that to IPFS through the Kubo CLI, and then my computer's hosting that file, and then I send back to Nikolai an HTTP address that he can put in his browser, and then this is an IPFS gateway that you can pull up and view the file that my system is hosting. So we'll see if this works. Okay, so here's my terminal where he's connected. Nikolai, go ahead and type in something and hit enter. And if he doesn't, that's okay. I'll pull up what we did in our test, or it's possible it disconnected. So there we got something. Drop bear. Okay, so I got the term drop bear from him. Here's some logging from my computer. Downloaded it correctly. It added it to IPFS, and then I sent him this URL. My computer's pulling it up right now. Now, since I'm hosting the IPFS locally, it's a little slow until it gets cached within the network. An improvement could be to have pinned this with Pinata or something like that. But it's going to spin for a minute, and eventually we'll come up with a picture of a drop bear. So while we wait for just a few seconds, any questions? I wanted to hook this up to Slack so that it could be a little more interactive for everyone, but you need to have get admin approval to get a Slack bot, but we'll figure that out for next time. So it does this sometimes on the first, the IPFS gateway has timed out. I just hit refresh. It'll probably come up. Maybe it won't, but go ahead, Alex. What's your question?
Do you have like a certain event that you'd like want to integrate this into? Like would this be like a Launchpad project or?
Yeah, like, so I was thinking Launchpad, we do deep dives. For example, we did like we installed the Lotus node, and then we hosted a file. There we go. That's the image that came up. So yeah, throughout the Colo week was my idea. We break off and spend like, a half an hour every day. So we do a little bit at a time. And that way you can build out kind of a longer, interesting chain that leverages everyone's expertise. So Nikolai could take that, take this, or anyone could take this address, put it in a browser, and you pull up this scary looking thing. All right, that's it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Walker. All right, let me scroll down here. Miro's up next.
Perfect. So for my project, I picked a task to find out how we can connect Saturn L1 and L2 nodes using libp2p. Next slide, please. To set the stage, Saturn is a distributed CDN network, and our goal is to accelerate retrieval from Filecoin network. The idea is to build many points of presence all around the world. So when a browser client connects to the Saturn network, to an L1 node. The L1 node is very close to the browser, geographically close, and that should give us the best latency we can get. And for each L1 node, we want to have a swarm of L2 nodes in the same geo region again that can serve as a larger L2 cache for content. And then finally, if we cannot find content in L1, neither in L2, then we go to the storage provider to fetch it from the source. Next slide, please. And if you think about the request flow, how it goes if things go wrong, we have the client, the browser, which connects to the L1 node, asks it for the content. This connection is happening over HTTP or HTTPS, and is a typical request-response flow. Now, if L1 node has the content in the cache, it will respond immediately and all is good. If it doesn't have the content in the cache, then it wants to fetch it from the L2 node. And again, ideally, this should be a request-response style. So the L1 node asks an L2 node for content, and L2 node responds back. Now, we want to run L2 nodes on, or as part of Filecoin station, running on user computers, running in home networks, which typically means these computers are behind a firewall and cannot be reached directly from the cloud from outside. We found a way how to make this work with HTTP, but it was super tricky. Next slide, please. And what we could use is hole punching to punch a hole in the firewall, but that's not always reliable and takes time. It needs several requests and responses, several rounds to establish a hole punch, and that adds latency, which means the request would take longer to finish. So what we want the L2 node to initiate a connection to L1 node, because that doesn't require any hole punching. L1 node is on a public IP address. And now when L1 nodes want to fetch content, we want ideally to send the request in the opposite direction. We want the L1 node to request content from L2 node. And as I said, this is pretty much impossible with HTTP. Next slide, please. And this is where libp2p comes into play, because libp2p gives us a bidirectional channel. So when the L2 node dials to L1 node, it will establish a connection, a TCP transport. And once this is established, we can send messages in both directions. So the L1 node can request content from L2 node, and it works super easy and is very easy to work with. Next slide, please. And I prepared a little demo to show you how this works in practice. And I will take over the screen share if I may. So on the left side, you see my browser window, which is running which is showing the website served by the L1 node. The L1 node is running somewhere in a data center in Frankfurt. I deployed my Node.js code using Docker and fly.io service. And you can see there are no L2 nodes connected. And now let's pretend I start my Filecoin station with the Saturn L2 node running. Here I will just start a Node.js process. This is running a P2P node, which doesn't listen on any address. You cannot dial this node, it's running in private. But what it does, it connects to the L1 node, as can be seen here. When I reload the page, the L1 node is aware of the L2 node. This is another cool property of libp2p, it maintains list of all peers that are connected. And now I can start, ignore the error messages, and now I can start requesting content. So in my browser, I open I send a request to get content from IPFS. Now the L1 node will connect to the L2 node to fetch the content from the L2 node. And L2 node will just contact the IPFS gateway to get the content and returns it back. And then it goes all the way back to the browser, and we can see text from an XKCD comic. And it works for images as well. And that's it for the demo. And maybe just what's next, I also did a benchmark to have an understanding what is the performance of using libp2p compared to using HTTPS. And it turns out libp2p in Node.js is 20 times slower than HTTPS, 20 times. So my next project is to look into these performance issues and try to figure out if we can speed it up.
Thanks, Miro. That looks very cool. And up next, looks like we've got the AV Events Guide.
Hello, Launchpad. My name is Anna, and I am not being paid for this gig. That said, welcome to the AV Events Guide for Protocol Labs. I am pleased to introduce you to James and Patrick, who will take us on a tour of their world of sight and sound. Buckle the F up. Amazing things to come. Let's start with James. Why did you choose this as your Launchpad project?
Thanks, Anna. Hi, my name is James, and I work on the Outer Core Events team as AV Manager. I have over 20 years working in live events in the AV space, and I hope that I can answer your question today. So presenting your ideas to an audience can be stressful for some, easy for others. As a conference attendee, there's always a chance that certain presentations will either bore or fascinate. There's little folks can do to control that uncertainty. Fortunately, Patrick and I have a great deal of control over how someone looks and sounds, either on stage live or at home on Camtasia. It is our passion to bring out the best in the speakers we work with at PL and beyond. So currently, there are several well-intentioned documents floating around PL that contain conflicting standards and best practices when it comes to running AV for an in-person or virtual conference. Our Launchpad project aims to incorporate the best of those documents and some of our own findings into a very simple, one-stop shop AV events guide for both clients and vendors. I will now kick it over to Patrick to elaborate on our Keep It Simple approach.
Well, thank you, James. Hi, I'm Patrick. I also have about 20 years of experience with live event production and recently joined the Solaris team to help them out with AV. It is true. We want this guide to be very simple and evergreen. You've probably poked around on the Protocol Labs or Filecoin YouTube channels and seen videos that look very similar to the ones playing behind me. Now, this layout or look is known within Protocol Labs as a streaming template. In other places, it's known as a PIP or picture-in-picture. It's a composition of the video of the presenter as well as the slides they are presenting. And it's a strict standard for Protocol Labs for both live and edited recordings. Now, some folks have complained about this look as a standard because it lacks dynamics and is uninteresting. Surely we can cut between camera angles and crowd shots, cover Q&A. I agree with these objections, but I also understand the reasoning behind this mandate. The format protects the anonymity of the crowd, removes the guesswork out of whoever in the world might be editing, maintains consistency across all recorded talks, as well as ensures that no slide is forgotten. If the end goal is this, our guide to help folks achieve this does not need to be complicated. We'll come back to this in a minute, but first let's kick it over to James to talk about gear.
Up until around 6 years ago, live video production and streaming was expensive and required lots of enormous dedicated hardware, from switchers to mixing consoles to cameras of all shapes and sizes. Several AV vendors are still using this equipment purely because they've invested so much into it not too long ago, and folks will still pay to rent it. Well, thanks to the Twitch community, most of the old equipment we hauled from venue to venue has now been replaced by open source software and extremely affordable hardware that lowered the barrier to entry significantly. What was normally this became this. So now let's jump back to the template for a minute. If the goal is to be more budget-minded, and if this look is the end product we want, our guide will help you achieve this look in the most simple and efficient way possible. Don't get us wrong, we love gear, but we also know what is not required to achieve this end product. You can do a lot with a little. For example, she's not even real.
It is true. I am not. Over to you, Patrick.
We want our guide to help you and your potential vendors quickly navigate the event lifecycle from pre-production, production, and post-production. I'll start with in-person events. For pre-production, we'll go over venue interaction, design requests for slides, audio and video requirements. For production, we'll go over streaming keys, how to deliver those to your AV vendors, design asset loading for your AV vendors, as well as AV checks. And then finally, post-production. So asset gathering, all the recordings, all the isolated recordings, as well as editorial requirements, as well as YouTube best practices for publishing. Over to James for virtual events.
We're all too familiar with video conferencing these days, but with just a few simple considerations, you can have an engaging virtual event, like this one, that stands apart from the typical Zoom meeting. These would include elements of pre-production, like platform selection, AV and internet requirements, presentation workflow. And during the production, things like framing, lighting, and sound, remote interactions like breakouts, presentation, media management, and on to the post-production, which includes asset gathering, editing requirements, and best practices for YouTube. Our plan is to get approval from other video folks at PL before launching in Q1 of 2023.
Blah, 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 blah. Please stop talking, both of you. Okay, that wraps it up for the AV Events Guide. Stay tuned for more amazing Launchpad projects. Cohort V7 forever.
There we go. Cool. All right. Thanks a lot again for that one. Just a reminder, the QR code in the top right there is for voting for projects, but we can do that at the end after you've seen everything. And we've got a team from Banyan up next.
So at Banyan, we've been working on a compliance framework for miners. And the main thing we're working at right now is a way to publish and attest to auditable compliance chains in a way that, you know, any user can actually go look, figure out compliance, and make decisions about where they want to put their data. Next slide. Yeah, so the motivating product idea is that like any type of enterprise data, but like actual user data, hospital data, like data like kept by financial institutions, like anything that is stored in a business setting or used in a business setting needs to be stored under some sort of compliance like condition. Like this is about 80% of real data, our initial research shows. So without some sort of signaling mechanism on on top of Filecoin, we're losing out on like systematically intaking like 80% of real data. Like there are miners that do individual deals and like get some sort of level of compliance themselves. Like we've heard miners like getting SOC 2 compliant and like making deals with clients, but like it's not really a scalable way to approach the problem. So yeah, and also if you're running a smaller miner, like not petabytes on petabytes on petabytes on petabytes, but like maybe a couple petabytes, maybe even a couple terabytes, like it's very expensive and there's no way to signal your services. So it's not even clear if like becoming a client is a good investment for you. So the solution that we're thinking of is publishing compliance certificates in the EVM in a way that's auditable and ingestible by all sorts of APIs. And then we're also doing some research into actually onboarding Filecoin miners onto such a program. Next slide. So how it would work is that a miner would go to an auditor and get certified, which is a very long process. We want to help streamline that in as many ways as possible, and we're doing some research into best practices for that, and also building relationships with these auditors. The auditor would mint some sort of certification. So usually if you're talking about HIPAA compliance, the usual product of such an auditing process is like some sort of PDF. That gets published in whatever repository managed by the company that hands out these licenses. So like High Trust is a form of HIPAA certification. They maintain a repository where people they license their certification process to can actually upload their audit reports. Banyan would intake these certifications, rehost them, and then publish these certs on chain, and then make those like all that metadata indexable by some sort of indexing protocol. We're thinking of trying to bring the graph over to the FEVM. So that would be, which is going to be a hard lift, but we think it'd be good for the ecosystem and then also make our end product way more usable. Next slide. So essentially what we're trying to implement is some type of formalized compliance attestation. So so we are trying to basically implement some sort of statement that like X says that Y says that Z is A, or more concretely, like Banyan says that this auditor says that this miner is SOC 2. So that somebody who trusts Banyan can go along, follow this root of trust, and then trust that the miner that they want to make a deal with is SOC 2. Next slide. Yeah, so far, our main focus is developing this attester, or like the framework in which either a client or some sort of service like Bacchio would actually ingest this data. For MVP, we're just implementing a very straightforward AWS database and like S3 buckets for hosting these certs, exposing all that data through like consumable APIs. For the MVP, we don't have any real miner data on board right now. but maybe we could, but if we're like we're trying to get some partnerships going to actually get some miners onboarded. It would be nice if we could expose this as some sort of consumable API, but we're also planning some sort of like really simple interface for you to search and find miners that you want to make deals with. Yeah, and for onboarding right now, it's just a white glove service and consulting on the certification process, because it is complicated, but there's a lot of steps that we can collapse just by doing this a lot and by researching the best routes specifically for Lotus and for different types of Lotus implementations. In the future, we're going to move this all into that EVM and use the graph for implementation for Web3 exposure. And then we're in the process of researching like a whole suite of compliance products that would help get miners compliant and data onboarded onto the network. Next slide. So Sean.
Yep. And so kind of the whole goal of, storing this on chain is kind of having this be a lot, like user accessible, right? Like user accessible, publicly accessible at any time, any moment, and kind of creating a sort of compliance Lego to actually build further, dApps down the road on. And so we're kind of implementing an open source attestation contract where it's sort of like a compliance DAO. The governor can mint and sort of revoke certifications for miners based on their compliance status, and this is a compliance status will just mostly be like publicly accessible, like readable contract type getters that setters as well that like allow miners people to build off of miners compliance statuses, and of course for the governor to actually set those changes, revoke changes, approve, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, as you can kind of see in the bottom right there in the picture, these contracts are compilable. They've been deployed, and kind of what's left here is testing.
Next slide, please.
Okay, you got about a minute left in this one.
Oh.
Okay, we'll make this quick. The graph is an indexing protocol for querying networks like Ethereum and IPFS. It's just readable API for on-chain data, and this will be used to index filter options for miners by certification standards that you'll see later on in the demo. Graph indexers are actually not live on the FEVM right now. Ideally, we'd like to build a subgraph, which is an open API that you can access without actually going to the smart contracts to find compliant miners. And we're currently pushing the Filecoin ecosystem to push out indexers. And while we're waiting for this feature, we do have a front end to show. This is a quick demo in terms of design decisions. For clients, we added in multiple filters that would narrow down their options for the ideal miner. And for storage providers, or miners in this case, we added an open view of other miner profiles so that they can compare their own qualifications with others. This can be a way for miners to increase their certifications if they feel like they're not competitive with other miners. We were very intentional with how the demo was designed, and we're hoping that Filecoin can get some indexers out so that we can hopefully release this to production.
Awesome. Is that okay, cool. Thanks a lot, Alex, Thea, and Sean. Looks very cool.
So we actually have an internal build out going on, at least with some Figma diagrams and some backend integration with Lotus to build something called enterprise.storage, but it has a very specific product market vertical that it's going after. And we'll see how that evolves. But I had an idea that there are customers out there that fit into the bell curve of data sets that are between 10 and 100 terabytes right now. And there isn't necessarily a fit in our ecosystem for that. They are archival customers. So next slide. I would like to see something built. I will certainly not be building it. I just copied this into Figma, but I basically ripped off Google Flights, but there are people out there consistently that reach out to us that have region-specific data storage needs first more than anything else. So I created an idea that you would just drop into a website, make it interesting for the user, throw up some possible ideas if they wanted to store something under a 12-hour SLA or one copy or more. Throw up some ideas on, like Toronto, for example, that's got great natural disaster protection. It's got low latency. It's got Commonwealth data sovereignty laws, and it's got America to protect it. So it doesn't have to have an army, which is also good for cost structure of running a country, therefore keeping the price down. And of course, that's just a joke. But another example is customers in the MENA region have no interest in storing their data outside of MENA because they have Islamic law protection. They can store things that we might not allow in the United States. It's, another great example is they also might have a stable government. Hong Kong, also a great example where people actually prefer to keep their data in Hong Kong because of anonymity. There are lots of dodgy data sets that get to be stored there, from porn to, more porn. And then you've got other things that Hong Kong favors. They have CCP agreements that allow for the CCP to look at your data, which is a requirement if you want to allow that data to be used in China. The example here is it would just be an open market bid where SPs would advertise themselves at a region specific, or you could even swap out New York for a minor ID. But in general, I would like to see something built where large SPs are advertising themselves and being able to collect fiat payment and starting off from their regions, because there's a lot of requests for this. And then you can see here, this is obviously just a markup, but you would be able to see, oh, look, it's actually very cheap to store data in Northern Norway because data centers are cheap there, power is cheap, cooling is cheap. Maybe I only care about price more than anything else over region. Whether or not anything will get built like this with our other tool, we'll see. I'm happy to see some other people focusing around compliance and other things, because those are requests that could fit into this model where when you go to store data, it's a filter of importance. You may not care whether somebody is compliant because you could just be storing lots and lots of photo albums that are 100 terabytes or more, and who cares if it's compliant data? But it's an idea. Whether or not we'll integrate this into enterprise.storage depends on how complex this would be. But I'm happy to see people talking about maps, grading storage providers, all things like that will eventually come to fruition. It'll probably take a year or more for some of those tools to be vetted out and into production. That's it.
Very cool. I could see this being useful.
So yeah, my project was sort of two parts. I presented last week my design doc and sort of encouraging metrics. And as part of that, I'm also going to kind of improve observability in my own team's project, which was the Bacalhau project. I mentioned that last week, and so I wanted to follow up with where we're at right now. So next slide, please. So the objective, just to kind of make sure we're all on the same page. Next slide. Yeah, so the objective again is that we want to improve the observability of Bacalhau. Bacalhau again is the computing over data team. And we want to improve this by building out our current systems for metrics collection, processing, and dashboard generation. There's a bunch of issues that are filed against this, so I'm kind of starting to work towards them. To provide a little background, next slide. Next slide. Yeah, to provide a little background, Bacalhau has been around for about 9 months, but unfortunately, up until this point, we actually haven't had any sort of substantial dashboards to track useful metrics to answer questions like, how many unique users are we having, like total on a given day over a period of time. We also haven't had the ability to track sort of how many jobs are people running on our systems, how many jobs are we running per day, how many in total. These would be very nice high-level metrics to be able to tell people and also to track, so to call vanity metrics. Also, it'd be useful to know sort of being able to break down our statistics in terms of sort of we're running certain jobs, what types of jobs are we running? And, you know, this is necessary for a few reasons. Obviously, first and foremost, it's useful to know sort of the operations of your system, right? This gives you a window Otherwise, you're sort of operating in a black box, right, situation where you can't see what's going on. But if you have these metrics, it gives you a way of peeking in at the health of the system. You know, if you're expecting a certain number of jobs to run every day, and then all of a sudden it just starts dropping on your dashboards, you can infer probably something isn't healthy with your system. Of course, another reason that I espoused in my design talk was that you do want to track metrics in order to ensure when you roll out features, you're actually able to measure the changes that you say should happen. So if you're claiming you're going to, you know, increase users, or you're going to make a particular change so that number of jobs goes up, you want to be able to have metrics that are currently tracking that, so you can sort of have a before and after to understand whether when your feature lands, it actually does what it said it was supposed to on the tin. And of course, tying in with all of this, and also something I promoted in my design talk, is to make sure you have the ability to roll back and measure whether this was successful. So, you know, the only thing worse than pushing something out to production and having it cause problems is not knowing whether the bleeding has stopped. You need a way to sort of understand how your system is responding to changes just in general, rollbacks being the most prominent reason, but there's a lot of reasons you'd want to be aware of sudden changes in your system outside of expected feature changes. So those are the main reasons, and that's sort of why we're doing this, the background. So next slide, please. Next slide. So here's a high-level overview of sort of what we're going to be, or what I'm going to be designing and putting together. This is sort of a high-level view of the metrics pipeline. You can see on sort of the left side, I've labeled these as local nodes. These are the currently running jobs in a Bacalhau system. So at the moment, we actually have 6 Bacalhau nodes we're running. Obviously, anyone can run their own nodes, but we always maintain a set of 6 nodes so that anyone can run whatever they like on our systems just to test it, kick the tires. These jobs are generating 2 forms currently of output. One of them is an open telemetry trace. What this means is every time a job is running, various statistics about how long it spends in certain functions and certain amount of time, memory, kind of usages of the actual operating of each individual trace as it's executing is sent to a system we call Honeycomb. We also have a set of logs that we produce that are append only. So what this means is that we actually just keep track of these logs over the entire length of time the node is up. Each time these nodes are reset, the logs reset. So for this reason, the new design will essentially have a system that every 5 minutes, this is a cloud provider, will pull all of our data from Honeycomb and from these CSV files and parse it and normalize it into data that's actually sort of stored in a data directory, so that the data isn't lost if the nodes go down. And we also have the ability to query for particular time periods instead of having to load the entire log file in order just to query for a particular time frame. So once we've gotten this data parsed and normalized and placed into a data directory, we can actually start to use Prometheus, which is the backend data storage layer for Grafana. We can use this to query the JSON files that we've stored. Just for example, I'm using Google Cloud endpoints and Google Cloud buckets, but we may end up using AWS or some other cloud provider. I'm just most familiar with these at the moment. But yeah, Prometheus is able to query JSON stored in the cloud. So this gives us a nice way of storing our data in a publicly accessible way in Google Cloud Bucket, but also in a format that can be queried by Prometheus to then end up generating our final dashboard. So that's sort of the overview of the system that is going to be built out. And the idea of this is that we'll be able to track you know, very low level metrics, but also as part of this pipeline, aggregate them and produce higher level metrics, such as things like active users, whatever active might mean. Maybe they log in and use something so many days in a row or X number of days in a certain sliding window. So these kind of definitions can be applied at this level so that we can have very much high level statistics as well as low level statistics. You really need both in order to sort of understand your system. Next slide, please.
Richard, you have about a minute left.
Okay, I can get through this. So if you just can kind of go through the next 4 slides, these were produced by Luke, who is working on our team. I was in Austin last week, but he put this together and we helped work through this. So if you can just go through the slides, these are actual numbers from the initial sort of pipeline that we've run to gather some statistics. Yep, and then the next slide, these are sort of jobs we're running. It only goes back till October when we were writing logs files out. Next slide. But this is just an example of some of the initial data we've been able to extract. And hopefully we'll have a lot more data once we start figuring out what sort of the business metrics we want to track are. Next slide. So next step is essentially to take this pipeline as it was shown and productionize it to generate the graphs that were just shown. So at the moment, this is sort of being done by a bunch of goodwill, baling wire, and duct tape. But if we want this to be more productionized, that's kind of the next step, is to how do I take this and make it look like that nice picture with all the redundancies and fallbacks that you'd expect. So that's where we're going. And next slide. Everyone, don't forget to give yourself a hug today.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Richard. That was great. All right, we've got WizKid up next. Nishant, are you online?
Yeah, I am.
Cool.
Hey folks, I attended Launchpad remotely and it was a blast. I learned a lot of things. And this is a project I worked on, which is YouTube Download IPFS, which is a wraparound YouTube download. For those of you who don't know, YouTube Download is like a script where you can provide a YouTube URL, download the video for your local consumption, and people use it for all kinds of things, to like archive YouTube videos or like share it with each other where internet is not something available. So the goal I set out for this project was basically building a wrapper around YouTube DL to preserve and share videos on IPFS, that is our decentralized web. Basically have a simple video player which could actually play that video, use a document store to like save YouTube keys and content mapping, and then host it on the public internet so that anybody can like cache it locally and then start playing those videos out.
I don't have human interaction.
Oh, sorry about that. So what I built, let's see a demo. You can try it as we go. This is available on Docker Hub right now. To set this up, you'll have to run this command, which is docker pull wizkid/ytdl IPFS :latest. You can copy it from the slides itself, but I have it copied here. Now to run it, I can just pass in the interactive flag, which is docker run interactive, with the image name and the version I want to run. And what it will give me is basically a it brings in all the dependencies and everything and gives me a prompt to enter the video URL. So this is a video from John Oliver, which is about the Qatar World Cup, which he recently posted. He's one of the critically acclaimed anchors I really love, and his videos get taken down all the time by different regimes. So that makes it a good case. So it downloads it, connects to my local IPFS nodes and saves it there, and then gives me a link to the video player which I built and is hosted statically. Now I can click on that and it starts playing over IPFS. So if I go to the network tab here, I can see all the content got loaded from the local network. Quick refresh will actually tell me that. All the videos are loaded from ipfs.io, but since I'm using IPFS Companion, these get loaded from my local node instead of loading from the network. And that's basically the demo I have built out for you. The Docker images are live on hub.docker.com, so you can actually go here and check it out for yourself. The repo is open source, so you can start pulling these images and start caching videos locally. And let me know if you have any questions around this. But before that, there's a scope for like improvements here. This does not cover pinning multiple formats. Like YouTube has a lot of video formats that it presents for each video, from anywhere, like to load videos on 3G network versus like 5G networks. They'll do optimized, like pre-optimized videos in all those formats which users are about to use. So we can download video content in different formats and pin those. This is not happening right now, but that's on my plan to like implement. Loading Claire over the internet requires a stable gateway, which means it does not work very well if you don't have local gateway installed. So I would recommend to have a local gateway running and provide it to the script or the player so that we can do that. Like IPFS Companion does it by default. Like my local gateway is connected here, so make sure you have that running somehow. The tests are missing, like any MVP. The Docker images need a bit improvement. The connection can get flaky at times, but this works most of the time. The web player here can have more meta information. Like right now, I'm just loading the title, but all of the information is available here. So I can just like fetch everything from here and like show that, but I did not spend too much time on building the UI. So just like make it practical. Having a faster internet helps, but in reality, what I should have been doing is downloading different chunks of those video and uploading those chunks in a content archive format instead of like uploading the file of the video directly. And in future, I would also like to support IPNS, which would just make content resolution much more easier. Right now, it shares a hash, which we don't want. So IPNS would make things so much better in this case. I also plan to add a Chrome extension or maybe an extension to the IPFS companion where if you are on YouTube, you get a button, you just click it there and it just archives that video in IPFS for you and gives you a link to the custom like video player that you can use. During this project, what I learned was a new web framework, which is called Lit HTML. I've not worked with this before. So I spent time learning on this. It's a lightweight glue around web components, which is like an ECMAScript standard. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with this, but I think this is really nice and it just produces really small bundles which can be used on the web. So static hosting becomes so much easier. IPFS routing behaves quite differently when using Companion. That means if I'm loading content over IPFS IO, it automatically gets routed to my local host. But if I'm using it over Cloudflare IPFS, it does not do that. So there's some inconsistency there, which I plan to address sometime later. Adding content to IPFS is quite fast, but retrieving is like really, really slow. So content discovery needs some improvement. Building mapping between URLs and manifests is like really hard. IPNS might be a solution, but I didn't get time to explore that. So I would like to learn more about that. And IPFS local APIs are somewhat aging with IPFS.js. Good thing we are building it again. So hopefully we can have a better API going forward. And don't forget to vote for me. And that's my time. Any questions are really appreciated.
Thanks a lot. That was great. And just under the time limit too, which is awesome. And I believe Lerna's up next. This one here.
Yeah, inspired by Chris's Filecoin background. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about ChainSafe files. It's one of the products we have at ChainSafe. We're going to talk about a little bit of the history of the product. Then we're going to look at the front end, the back end, and then at the end, if we have some time, there's a little game that I recorded, a run through that I made for this presentation. So we can move on to the next slide, please. So simply put, ChainSafe Files is an encrypted file storage system. It was launched about 2 years ago, and I put some of the features on there, so end-to-end encryption. But the idea basically came from working with Protocol Labs and having our Forest implementation. We just started to be interested in the storage space, so we sort of jumped in. It's actually built using something called ChainSafe Storage, which is the backend that we have in Go, and that will support the file system, and it also seamlessly connects with IPFS and Filecoin. So the idea is if you're an end user, you're not super tech savvy, you use ChainSafe files, and everything is automatically encrypted. If you're a developer, it's more geared for you to go towards storage. So those are the two separate things. The backend itself, the infrastructure is exactly the same for files and storage. The difference is really just the front end. So we can move to the next slide and I can show you guys a little bit more. So if you were to Google ChainSafe files and you actually sign up, eventually when you log in, you'll see the first screen on the left. So you have a few options there. You can log in with your wallet, your email, which is what I usually use. And then as soon as you do, you jump to the screen on the right side. So it kind of looks like an inbox for your email. Very straightforward. You click upload, you put something on there. You can create folders, put stuff in your folders. and this will automatically be pinned onto IPFS, and also it will be pushed to Filecoin as well. So now that we saw the front end, I'm going to show you guys how it works under the hood, so we can jump to the next slide. I'm not going to go through everything in too much detail. My team lead helped me make this, but this is basically like a service level diagram. Just so you guys know, all the cylinders you see there, those circle round things, those are just databases. We use different ones depending on how flexible or loose we need the data structure to be. And then those things poking out on both sides, those lines, those are just exposed APIs. So we'll start with what says user at the top. So that first box is the user service. This is basically where you'll see it manages logins, like user data, access keys, everything will be stored and managed in the user service. A little bit lower, we have files. So files is where we manage the buckets and the actual file system. And it is pointing down to billing. So billing is pretty straightforward. It's what it sounds like. It takes care of the subscription plan. So it tells us how much storage a user has and to what extent they can use our file service. Moving on in the middle, we have something called the message bus. All you need to know about that is it's used when something requires changes on multiple levels. So like on the IPFS level or Filecoin level. For us, there's two scenarios. The first one is the search at the bottom right. So search service is just like when you're searching for something on your computer, you have multiple folders, you forgot where you put something. You'll go through different buckets and search for content. And then the second scenario where we use message bus is for the pinning service. So this is where we provide the pinning APIs for users. And this is also the section that's responsible for replicating data onto IPFS and then pushing that data onto Filecoin. Okay, so we can move on from this slide. Okay, and you're going to click on what says link in the middle. Yeah. So this is just a quick YouTube video. One of the devs helped me make it. A little shout out to Forrest. So this is our little guy, Ty. He's at the forest. He finds the box, supposed to represent IPFS. And then I wanted to have a false bottom that would be IPLD because IPFS is built on top of it. We ran out of time, but it's just a little game that tells you about the system and pinning because people who are not as tech savvy usually would always ask me, why do I need to pin things on IPFS or what is pinning if I'm already storing it? So as you guys all know, things get cached and then there's something called the garbage collection. So if you don't have anything pinned or if you haven't secured anything with a miner or multiple miners on Filecoin, then your content will likely not be there. So that's it. That's pretty much it for my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Lorna. That was very cool. Caleb, yeah, go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right. So I'm just mourning, grieving because Argentina is in the finals of World Cup, but you know, Brazilian life. But yeah, I mean, since I started working on IPFS world on Web3, and I found out on this infrastructure that we had different kinds of implementations for IPFS, and I tried to do something different. So I call Yaki. I'm sorry because I don't have this kind of creativity for names. So yet another Kobo implementation. Next slide, please. So what we have so far, mainstream, let's say we have Kobo. That's the one we're using at Fission. We have Iro that's being developed by some folks that we know, and we're probably going to try in the future. We have Elastic IPFS. That's a pretty cool idea to implement this on cloud native. We have the IPFS cluster. That's also something I can deploy on Kubernetes, and this works very well. But it's kind of not our theme. I mean, we're not against Kubernetes, but we like to see different things. And more recently, we saw Fargate deployment with IPFS. You know, at AWS, they wrote a very cool article. All of them are hyperlinks. So if you click, you'll send to the links, especially this last one. It's a pretty cool tutorial by AWS. Next slide, please. Right. So what is wrong with KES Kubernetes, right? sometimes it's too much, I feel that at the beginning you have Kubernetes and that's fine, but then you need sidecars and you need to deal with IP tables, with pod affinities and a lot of stuff, and start to become a heavier infrastructure environment that will need a lot of engineers to maintain. So sometimes it's too much. It's a pretty cool idea and a pretty cool tool. I've used it for years, but sometimes you need something lighter. And not everything should be on containers. You have some stuff that could be running on VMs or micro environments, something like that. And it's always good to have alternatives for every kind of technology you have. And Kubernetes, I like to say, is kind of the JavaScript of DevOps, so everything nowadays is built with JavaScript, which is fine because it works. But sometimes it's interesting to have a different kind of perspective on it. Next one, please. So what I thought about HashiCorp Nomad. So I just wrote that it's Kubernetes, but not. So what is the biggest difference, let's say, about them? Well, Nomad, it has this kind of mixed application deployment. It's single. We work with single self-contained agents. You can deploy it on multi-region federation. You can use on VMs, bare metal, not only containers. So it does some kind of stuff that Kubernetes does, but also works more as a scheduler and a task manager. So it's a pretty cool idea, to try to do in a different way. Next one, please. Yeah, so far, you need to work with some, not multiple, but some tools. For example, Docker and Podman, just to, in your local machine, just, separate nodes. Maybe Vagrant, if you don't want to run your own machine, you need to set up an environment so you can start to work on it. We can use some advantage that Nomad Rep gives us, same stuff that Kubernetes does. It has this consensus algorithm that you can share resources, and this is pretty good for IPFS because if you are storing things in an infrastructure, you need all of them to connect with themselves and share the resources, especially in a cluster. So this is a pretty cool advantage. Next one, please. And what other alternative that we have? Well, so there's a tool called Wasm Cloud. There's a pretty interesting one. I recommend you to check it out. It's very easy to deploy. It's very easy to install. It's powered by Rust and Elixir. Those guys that are working on it, they are putting some good effort on it. And I don't remember which version they are right now, but it is a pretty lightweight environment that you can run your own machine. And they just posted a new article on Newsstack about how they can replace Kubernetes. So that's a pretty interesting idea to check it out also. Next one, please. So what is next? I had a demo prepared for this, but unfortunately, live demos always fail, so I'm sorry. I need to develop a solid architecture like Elastic IPFS because one of the problems that I see with it, it's very expensive. I want something cheaper to run. I want to enable this to provide packages like NixNG. That is a very interesting idea with Nix. That's something that we are using. And agnostic deployment, doesn't matter if it's a container, VM, bare metal, you can use anywhere. Just download the custom config and that's it. And open observability. I like a lot this kind of topic, Prometheus, Cilium, Hotel. So something like that, because I think it misses a little bit on Kubo. You have a Prometheus endpoint in a port, but you don't have a lot of tracing, so it needs a little bit more. So this is something that I want to try as well. The last one. Another thing that was working is the issue 1366. And it's just to give another alternative when you want to test stuff on Kubo. It's a very simple, easy fix that you just need to create a memory go file and add some FX DSS lines to enable people to start this on command line when they want to try and in the memory, running memory. The only thing that I need to do yet is the sharpness test so it can be merged. But so far, it's working well. And that's it. I'm sorry for my lack of creativity on the slides.
No, no problem at all. The information was great, and thanks for sharing that with us. Very cool. Akshay is next.
Cool. So, hi guys, my name is Akshay. So Parloom is basically a decentralized data aggregation service for both on-chain and off-chain data. We rely heavily on IPFS, IPLD, and Filecoin to store this aggregated data. So the way we do this is in form of DAG chains, right? And these DAG chains, they usually get very long because we link to all the previous data to create a history of proofs, right? And it becomes very difficult for even IPFS nodes to maintain all of that. To mitigate this, what we do is we usually create segments of these DAG chains and store all of those segment metadata plus a bunch of other project metadata on our Redis servers to do the whole thing. But that's not a good approach, right? Because the whole idea is to be decentralized. So the goal of my project was to explore new ways to improve the architecture and like make Parloom more decentralized. Next slide, please. So here's the new architecture that I've come up with. A couple of interesting ideas here. The first one is called project manager. So the idea is when the full network goes live and like new peers will come and join and start snapshotting and all of that, right? We'll need some way where people can specify new projects and each project will have a config which you can, for example, think like the contact address, the chain ID, and a config, which is basically a way to extract the data from the smart contract, right? And all of that will uniquely represent a project. So we can store all of that config on IPFS, generate a unique CID, and use that CID to identify the project. So that if like there is any duplicate project or anything, so it will act as a unique identifier. Plus, all of these network peers, they'll be able to pull this config from IPFS and just start snapshotting the data. So that's the first thing. Secondly, so there will be this active project list, which we will be maintaining using IPNS. So initially the idea was we will maintain a lot of like all of this project metadata using IPNS. But the issue with that is we'll need to maintain a lot of keys to like update each IPNS record, right? So we are still exploring other ways to do that in a more efficient way because that's not the right thing to do. So for now, the idea is we just maintain one active project list, and all of these snapshotters, they will talk to this IPNS list and identify the active projects and all of that. And if there is some change in some like project status or something, right? We can use libp2p to notify all the clients, like you can stop snapshotting this project and all of that. So it gives us a lot of flexibility to build all of that. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, so like this is in a very initial and raw phase. We are still exploring and improving this new architecture. So like, and the next steps would be to first of all, I would like to monitor and like explore all the ongoing initiatives going on in the PL network and identify new technologies which I can incorporate to improve this design. Secondly, this whole architecture will need a lot of prototyping and designing and benchmarking as well. So I'll be like, I'm looking forward to doing all of that and generating reports and maybe share all of that with you in the future. Yeah, that's it from my side.
Okay, great. Seems like a cool idea, and thanks for sharing and for staying up late again. I know it can be difficult. Thanks a lot, actually.
Thank you.
And Torfin, I believe Torfin's still on the call. Are you there, Torfin?
I'm here.
All right.
I pivoted. Actually, I got pretty excited about a topic that there was some practical applications for, and I was already investing a lot of time and energy in this. I'm still going to do the stuff that I did before, which is onboarding and some Launchpad documentation for running indexer nodes. So I'll still help out with that. If Lindsay's concerned about that, we're going to take care of her. But this is a much more exciting topic. Basically, right now we're going through some, if you want to click on the next slide, we're going through some iterations of evaluating privacy options for kind of increasing, really adding configurability to the storage provider's ability to make deals that would potentially affect like how deals are announced and how much of that's made public, but also the ability to, by default, have some privacy in the way that a lot of the storage and SIDs are saved. And so Sean had brought to our class a white paper where people were analyzing like the traffic patterns of the IPFS and Filecoin networks to kind of make determinations about who's accessing what data, potentially where they're storing it, and by virtue of that, who's doing deals with which storage providers, which is potentially something that they don't want to expose. But all of these topics have been coming up in a bi-weekly content routing work group that I created, which the meetings of this work group are public. So if anybody would like to join, I can share with you the IPFS stewards calendar. They'll also be on Luma, and anybody's welcome to join and kind of listen in. These are topics of how the future of IPFS is going to handle content routing, and it includes a lot of infrastructure discussions. So feel free to join. We'd love to have your opinions. But I really thought, why is nobody using ChatGPT yet? And could we potentially use AI to rapidly kind of shore up use cases and decisions we make? So a question came up, can we write a threat model for the privacy against, IPFS users by kind of malicious actors? Like, what could they actually get and do? This is pretty well-known data to a lot of folks that work within our ecosystem, but possibly not as well-known or visible to folks outside of it that are just starting to experiment with it. And so my hypothesis is that ChatGPT could be used to quickly eliminate the administrative burden of engineers performing threat modeling activities. The possibility is one of my engineers that's working on building a double hashing system for the DHT would have to take a bunch of time to write up a threat model to help justify whether or not we would do this work. We know very strongly that this is like a good idea. It's going to come with some costs, but in order to justify that to everyone else, it takes a lot of work. And so theoretically, I was thinking, can I just have the AI kind of do some of this for us so that the engineers don't have to waste a bunch of time on it? If you could click on the next slide. I'm going to jump straight into kind of a summary, and then I made a Loom video of me going through the process of generating code with the AI and kind of some summary results that we'll jump into here in a sec. But here's the pros and why you should care. The ChatGPT bot is trying to convince me of the merits of decentralization. Like, everything it's writing is like, you should use this network for these reasons. This is valuable, which I was really entertained by. It values the benefits and positive sides of decentralization. And not only that, when it's looking at our network, it's calling out the weaknesses of where we're not decentralized, which is a big topic among engineers that work on our products. Like, this is too centralized, right? Like, what is a more decentralized way we can do this? And it's pointing out ways that we could potentially do that. I was really surprised by that. With very little coaxing, it not only recognizes the advantages and challenges of our ecosystem, but it also recognizes where to find obscure packages and API calls within our code base. So I'll jump to the cons to kind of explain why I thought this was really novel. But the advantage here is that if you don't work every day with, like, for instance, libp2p, you're going to have to read a lot of documentation as an engineer to kind of figure out how to leverage some of the APIs or how to make some of the package calls in order to accomplish what it is that you hope to do. And so the benefit of this, And I will say none of the code that it generated for me immediately worked out of the box. My Go implementation is kind of screwed up. I'm not an engineer that writes in Go, so I'm kind of limping along in comparison to what most of the engineers would be doing. But I will say that the code that I was able to generate with this tool immediately recognized all those important points. It recognized where I would want to go to conduct queries, and it was able to produce a logical query that I recognized it wouldn't take very much finagling to turn this into like actionable code. And I created an entire series of basically really creepy deal hunting tools that could recreate, like for a particular user, for instance, what storage providers they were using. And I could recreate a history of all the data accessed by a particular user. And I could recreate, I could search for users by storage provider. Like there are a lot of different ways that I could kind of structure this data, but areas that I'd say we should be focused on, you could write really rapid function tests and possibly queries if you needed them. And also there's a great potential for like adding this to your workflow as an engineer to write unit tests or possibly even regression tests for yourself. Just pretty quickly by plugging in your own code and asking it like, what's a quick way I could put unit tests together for this? So big time saver. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to get you so close that like, you're just going to be like playing around with it a little bit rather than doing all the work. And then the things I wanted people to be concerned about, none of the code it generates is in a shippable state, at least that I was generating. And it doesn't quite know how to handle all the dependencies. So it does a little bit of bad Go stuff where it does import cycles and things that I think junior Go developers probably wrestle with. It was kind of having some of those same problems, but those are easy things to fix. And then it has it has a potential to deliver to you very confidently something that is completely devoid of context. So in order to use this well, you have to know like truly what it is that you're trying to accomplish and whether or not what it's given you is going to fail miserably. And if you go to the next slide, how are we ticking?
We're getting close to the time limit here.
Okay, click on that Loom link and then maybe just start at like minute 6.
Okay.
You can just move it to minute 6.
All right, everyone.
You want to talk over it? Do you want me to have the audio from this?
Yeah, I'll talk over it. So basically, what I kind of come to the conclusion here, and I put this Loom up public, so anyone that wants to click that link can go on it and kind of go through my process. Basically, I started with very general queries towards like, what is IPFS? Why is it beneficial to use? What are the privacy risks? If I wanted to recreate this data, how would I go about doing that? And then I got more and more articulate with explicit requests that I was making. So I was throwing GitHub repos at it and saying, if I go to this GitHub repo and I wanted to use this module in order to accomplish this thing, can you write me a program in Go that would do these specific tasks? And it spit out quite a bit of code. The conclusion that I throw into the end of this video is that this code isn't immediately ready to work right out of the box, but I built a complete like kind of privacy research kind of toolbox in a matter of probably 2 hours that even as like a very inexperienced Go programmer and not a software engineer by trade, I could get the majority working with, you know, in a pretty short amount of time. So the fact that I'm able to do that as a TPM, I think speaks a lot of value towards what more experienced engineers would be able to do with it. And I would highly encourage folks to get in there and start playing with it a little bit. I think for kind of product decision making, like I was originally trying to get at, this is very valuable because you can start with a stub of a product just in the ideation phase with very little investment. And that gets people iterating very quickly.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks a lot, Torfin.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was great. And I believe this is the last presentation, and also that these three were unable to attend today. They've linked a Loom video presentation here. Let's see. Oh, 1 minute and 24 seconds. Oh, wait, they said play at normal speed, 1:40. Let's do that. That'll bring our show me what you got to a close, unless I'm misspeaking and there's one more after this, but we're getting close to the end here. Let's
Hey Launchpad team, how's it going? My name is Nicholas. I'm representing a team with T and Brendan, and we're working on building the PLN CRM. Our project Explain is that the Protocol Labs network is hosting a number of regional events via the various teams in the network. And while we're hosting an increasing number of events, the database of attendees is not connected. We seek to build a CRM that connects all of our contacts and publicize it within the Protocol Labs network. We've already made a lot of great progress when it comes to combining attendee data from over 70 plus Filecoin community events and collecting over 9,000 leads, working with legal to draft an agreement for attendees that allows us to use their data, and creating our CRM. We've also made HubSpot training documentation so that people within the organization can learn how to use the software. We've created a lot of dashboards so that we can understand on a cumulative and a monthly basis what types of people we're reaching out to, understanding their demographics and what might be most interesting for them to learn. We've created landing pages so that specific topics like case studies on different storage providers can be readily accessible to our contacts. And we have understanding based on email flows on open rates and click rates so that we can better understand what types of communications are most valuable to anybody that we're reaching out to. Long term, the goal for this project is to make sure that we're widening our growth funnel, increasing the potential for growing brand awareness, and finally creating the opportunity for regional events marketing that's accessible to all the teams within the Protocol Labs network. And we're excited to get your help. Talk soon.
All right. Thanks to Nicholas, D, and Brendan for that. And I think this is their slide, and that brings us to the end of Show Me What You Got. Thanks for hanging out and supporting the last few if you're able to, and there might be people watching this later, so thanks for tuning in. Just a couple last pieces here. A reminder to vote for the following categories: biggest contribution to existing projects, the most impactful technical contribution, most exciting, best presentation, best collaborative effort, most likely to be used, and the most valuable for PL.
Dave,
And
Anna Claire needs to go.
Oh, okay, Anna Claire.
Yeah, so I've been working with Estuary. I just wanted to learn how to be an open source contributor. And so I've just picked up I didn't have one single project. I've just picked up tickets over the week. I added a CLI command. And then I made a branch with lots of CLI commands and then a bash script where you can run a local shuttle. So I guess Estuary is a storage client where you can pin data to IPFS and then it'll make Filecoin deals for you. And so I made a script where you can run a local version of a node and then upload your files really easily. And then it'll make deals, and it prioritizes providers based on their proximity to Texas, which I thought was funny. I helped fix a memory leak. I helped implement a cache for commonly hit endpoints. And then I made this last night. It's in React, so it's not really coding. You can type in a deal ID for any content where the deal was initiated by Estuary, and it'll check the status. This is a deal I made last night, verified, reported on the chain. I'm going to add a feature where it tells you the time that it was reported and sealed. If you have it's not going to be found. It's still a little, where are y'all? Okay, cool. It's still a little glitchy right now, but I'm working on it. And then I don't know, I guess what I got out of this was, originally I just wanted a job, but I've discovered how cool it is contributing to open source. I'm really glad that I've had an introduction to this. It's always been really intimidating for me. It's just I don't know, it's given me a lot of confidence in my coding abilities, and I've been really excited about it. So that's that's my project, I guess.
Awesome. Thanks, Anna Claire. I'm glad we got to see that. And I'll scroll down to the end here. So yeah, We'll post this in Slack. Don't worry about it right now. But if you'd like, you can scan the QR code. This link will be in our Filecoin cohort Slack. We'll be asking you to vote on this today and sharing award winners tomorrow in our final weekly sync. Once you complete the end of cohort survey, and if you've completed all the quizzes throughout the curriculum as you work through it over the past few weeks, you'll be receiving Launchpad Learning Credential, an NFT from CertE. So do it, I guess. You you complete that, and we'll have something coming your way. I believe there might also be something coming your way if you completed the DevTools activity in Austin. So I guess everybody who was there who did that might also be receiving something in the new year. Keep an eye out for that. And just a reminder to vote. And now it's all up to you. We are super excited to see you all, grow in the network, grow in your teams. We'll definitely be in touch. We'd love for you to come back as a mentor. Once again, shout out to the mentors from this cohort, or to have you come back and host a Q&A, or even join us at a Colo week if it's convenient to where you're based. So thanks so much. This has been a great few weeks getting to know you and seeing these projects develop to fruition. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow at the weekly sync as we wrap things up. And then that'll bring our cohort to a close. Thanks again for hanging out, and sorry that this ran late. Have a great day, evening, wherever you are. And I'll see you all soon. Thanks again. Bye.